This talk was given by Roshi Rafe Martin, guiding teacher of the Endless Path Zendo, a lay Buddhist community in Rochester, New York. Join our practice, in person or online, at endlesspathzendo.org.
So today is Saturday, June 22nd, 2024, and here at Endless Path Zendo, we're going to continue with our reading from the really terrific new book of the life and Zen teachings of Tangen Harada Roshi, Throw Yourself into the House of Buddha. It's been quite an extraordinary read so far. His autobiography is really quite something. But as he himself mentions, you can't do what I did. I did what I had to do. But you can do what only you can do. And the essence of that is complete sincerity, to really make up your mind to do it and to then with complete sincerity, to do it to the best of the circumstances and conditions of your own life, but to the absolute best. It requires scrupulous honesty as well as complete sincerity. Of course, some people confuse Tangen Harada Roshi with Shodo Harada Roshi, two completely different people. Shodo Harada Roshi is alive. He is a Rinzai teacher, mostly up in northern Washington. And he is an excellent teacher. Tangen Harada Roshi, though, was at Bukokaji. He was the adopted son of Harada Roshi, who you know from the Three Pillars of Zen, and many of the teachers in our lineage, as well as senior students, spent a good time with Tangen Roshi and were all deeply, deeply moved by him. A really extraordinary human being and an extraordinary teacher. So we're going to pick up chapter 13 is where we will begin today. They're very short chapters, so we'll go through several at a time. This is great faith, great doubt, great determination. Let me just make sure. Yes, that's where we're at. So there are 3 points that are essential for Zen practice. All the great practitioners from times of old have stressed the necessity for these 3 basic elements. The first one is great faith. When we say great faith, it is not the great of great and small. It is a bottomless great, a great that is beyond comparison, including everything. Generally, we use the word faith to describe something far less, such as, I believe you. That kind of faith can easily become, I don't believe you, which is a disbelief. It is the same as saying, I think so. True faith is far deeper than, I think so. True faith is not something that is subject to change. Let me make a note here. Faith, we're talking about the faith that continues and is not in question, but is the very foundation of our being able to question. We question because we have faith that there is something more than our own dungeon, that is our locked-in concepts of body and mind. There is something more. The Buddha wasn't a fool, and he wasn't a liar, is what we believe, when he said upon his great enlightenment. In fact, he exclaimed it because he himself was shocked. Wonder of wonders, all beings, that means each being, all beings, which means you and me, are Buddhas, not one day when they've completed thousands of lifetimes of practice, they'll be a Buddha. Right now, all beings, each being is a Buddha, fully endowed, no one more, no one less, with all the wisdom, all the virtue, all the compassion of the universe. It is only what the Buddha said, it is only our self-preoccupied, self-centered thinking that prevents us from realizing and living from this. So this is the faith that Tangen Roshi is speaking about. Whatever our circumstances, whatever our practice is like, whether it's good or bad, has no bearing. So-called good, let's say, so-called bad, so-called doing well, so-called not doing well, all of that's irrelevant. Your faith is that there is something more, and nothing can change that, because it's a sense of something truly true. In any case, true faith is not something, to go on to Tangen Roshi, is not something that is subject to change. In Japanese, we call it literally the roots of great faith. Roots symbolize something really grounded. Once a great tree fell in a landslide here on the mountain behind our temple. It had been there for hundreds of years. The roots were still deep in the ground after it fell, and we tried to pull them out. It was impossible. So we had to take a chainsaw and cut through them. Roots are that strong. Deep faith is firmly rooted, absolutely unmoving. So what is this faith in? It is the faith that all beings are Buddha. It is trust in inherent Buddha nature. It is faith that everything is perfect just as it is, that everything is perfect just as it is. Nothing is in excess, nothing is lacking. Everything is in itself perfect virtue, absolute merit. Even though the mind's eye, the mind of truth, the eye of truth is not yet open, not yet far-seeing, we can have faith. We have faith in the teachings of truth, faith that penetrates the marrow, faith in inherent nature, that is your own original mind. That's firm, that's unmoving. My note here that I wrote on the page is this does not mean complacency. It leads to action, the action of practice realization, which is a way of getting to the root. So this faith leads to action. It's not, oh, everything's okay the way it is, and then you don't do anything. It leads to action. Faith that there's more, that human beings, all beings, are fully endowed with a wisdom, virtuous, unimpeded, free, empty of all self-centeredness, nature, and that it can be realized because it's our own mind. How could you not be able to realize your own mind? So it leads to action. I am Buddha nature, says Tangen Roshi. My true self is heaven and earth, one root. There is no thing in opposition to any other thing. No self versus other. We are all one root. It is not possible to divide original Buddha mind. Now, out of great faith comes, as you'll see, great doubt. Because if you look at the world around us, how could what he's saying here possibly be true? All we see is division, opposition, and the rages and infantile behaviors that arise from a sense of completely being isolated and then the need to either submit to an external force or dominate others, all emerging out of a simple misunderstanding of how to use our own mind. And that is the world we live in. We've created this very world by the way we use our minds. And of course, Zen practice is, what should we say? A way of correcting. It's putting on, it's getting laser surgery on your mind's eye and correcting your vision. And then you don't see double, you see single. That's the difference. But without the practice, which is our laser surgery on the mind's eye, we keep seeing double. And we live in illusion, and out of that comes terrible behaviors in many cases, as we see in our world today. To go on, Shakyamuni, the world-honored one, affirmed this truth through personal experience. And as Roshi Kapleau used to say, Zen unlike many schools of Buddhism, is all about personal experience. The point is to personally realize original mind, this truth that is your own nature, and then train oneself gradually through rounds of sitting, through interactions with others in the world, through koan practice, koan after koan, to integrate this into our behavior. And this is a transformative process and a lifetime's effort. It's not a quick fix. It's a lifetime's effort. Wonderful, wonderful, wonder of wonders. All beings are Buddha, endowed with Buddha virtue, Buddha wisdom. To continue, this points to our original nature, not any individual state of mind, but the true essence of mind. Of course, this is not only about human beings. Everything is as it is, Buddha. So why do you feel truth to be so distant, so separate, something that you have to reach out and try to get? As long as you perceive yourself to be alienated from reality, there will be, as the old saying goes, one joy to 100 sorrows. One joy to 100 sorrows. Until you have realized your true nature, the time of tranquility that you enjoy now and again will be followed by times of unease, restlessness, dissatisfaction, ups and downs. Here is where great doubt, the second essential point, comes in. Of course, your faith in Buddha nature is not in doubt. In fact, your faith in Buddha nature is so certain that you cannot help but ask, if I am really a Buddha, then why am I not realizing this? In fact, we can ask, why am I not behaving like this? Why do I feel so separate? Why can't I see? This great mass of doubt grabs everything out from under you, everything that is not essential. What is essential? That you awaken to your inherent Buddha nature. You have taken this question, this problem upon yourself. It is your driving question. In Japan, we have this thick slug that is said to have special medicinal qualities. When I was a child and suffering from lung disease, I was told to eat it. I remember well swallowing one of those things. I could feel the slug growing inside my throat as it was sliding down. I couldn't get it down. I couldn't swallow it, nor could I spit it up. I stopped breathing and just screamed. You can't explain it. It is too immediate. This immediacy is right here and now, and there is nothing outside it. That is how great doubt seizes you. Yamada Roshi said, what is great doubt? He said, it is being one with Mu. That's simple. One with the breath, one with the count, one with whatever your practice is. That is great doubt. Aiken Roshi used to say, great doubt is simply practicing to the best of your ability. That is great doubt. Another example we could use is that of a baby whose mother has left the room and will not come back for some time. A baby can't be at peace, a baby can't be at peace. It's asking with all its being, where is mother? Where is she? A baby looks around seeking. They can't help it. They forget everything else and just cry and cry for their mother, whether they're awake or asleep. They cry wholly, completely for their mother. Just absolute crying, nothing outside it. Nothing can stop the baby from crying for their mother. There's a koan, actually, what practice is best? And the response is, the baby's practice is best. What practice is best? The baby's practice is best. Just practice like this baby who is crying for their mother. This kind of practice is the most earnest, most honest, most direct way to pursue what you want with all of your heart. How relentlessly can you pursue this problem? How great is your doubt? Well, of course, the depth of your doubt depends really on the depth of your faith. Because you have this faith, you have this doubt. Real faith leads to action, not complacency. Pursuing it off again and on again, that was my note to this, by the way. Pursuing it off again and on again is not enough. You must be single-minded. You must not be thrown off track. You must not waste even a single breath. So waking, sleeping, working, playing. Behind it all is this great faith and this great doubt, this question. Who am I? What am I? Who is hearing? Who is breathing? Everything falls away throughout our life. Doesn't stay confined to the Zendo. There is no time to dilly-dally. This is the time to get on with it, to cut the thread of ignorance. That energetic determination is the third element, which we call great determination. Fierce determination, like that of a lion or a tiger. When the animal sits still, it is settled and completely quiet. But when the great cat strikes out, how its true nature is revealed. The energy is indescribable. This spirited force naturally arises in your practice from great faith and great doubt. Practice with energy, burning zestfully. When you hurl yourself full force into life, all of life trembles. Great determination does not permit you to falter. It is not just words, and you are not just an onlooker. Your reality, your present reality, let me add, just as it is the reality of the universe. One truth, one soul truth. So you're not testing it. You're not just dipping your toes into it. You're giving yourself, when you do your, pick up your practice, wherever you are in your moment of life, 100%. Just this mu, just this hu, just this breath, just this count. But no one can see it. It's just you, being fully you in this moment, but not sitting there, let's say in the Zendo, thinking about it, but being it through and through. Please know in your bones, I can realize it. Of course you can. It's your own mind. How could you not realize it? It's said with great faith, great doubt, great determination, and great, again, doesn't mean something out of the ordinary. It means true, sincere. You could no more miss your own mind than you could miss the earth when you stamp your foot. You cannot miss it. And yet, the great paradox is we do. We do. It could be terribly frustrating. We do. So we persist because we have this faith that something is there. These three keys to practice are in your hands, the roots of great faith, the great mass of doubt, the great fierce determination. You cannot wait to be forced to practice by some external stimulus. This faith, this doubt, this determination come from the source, and the source is within you yourself. The source of life is giving it. Don't hesitate to use it. If you practice these 3 points, there is no way in the world that you can fail to realize your true nature and fail to realize the great matter. So next is Samadhi, 14. In the beginning, it seems that there is self-will. There is a me doing this practice. I am practicing. This is my aim. This is my own effort, my own practice. You append this I to everything you are doing. The notion that I am carries with it delusion, division, and separation. But mysteriously along the way, what seems to be your self-will practicing comes to be practice practicing itself. When you are really practicing, you become one with what you are doing. There is no room for I, me, or mine to show its face. This is forgetting body and mind, becoming one with your practice until your practice is all there is. This happens naturally, growing out of your steady, continuous effort. The personal will becomes the will of the Dharma. What you first regard as your own effort, your effort as this human being, comes to be unconditional Dharma at work. Before I even knew anything about Zazen or practice, I had a glimpse of this. During World War II, remember he had volunteered as a kamikaze pilot, and the war ended just as he was about to step into the cockpit for his first and last flight. And at that moment, he made a vow that he would dedicate himself to the welfare of all beings. But he had many years of terrible pain and confusion, realizing how many lies had been told in Japan about the war and how many people had died unnecessarily and because of Japan's own egotism, in essence. And it haunted him and gave him no peace. So to go on. I had a glimpse of this. During World War II, we were required to strengthen our bodies and our willpower. We were told that if the youth of the country weren't strong, then we wouldn't be able to protect our country. So at school, rather than learning theoretical subjects, the emphasis was on strengthening body and mind. The teachers were very strict at this time, driving us to run faster and farther every day. I was quite affected by something I had read in a Chinese classic and chanted this chant in my belly wholeheartedly before and after as I ran. One time it brought out a great power, greater than the self-will I felt I had. All of us boys who were running were about the same level of fitness, but this day my running was different from what it had ever been before. First, it was painful, but soon the pain was forgotten, and through some strange power, I was sped along. After about 4 kilometers or so, the body was lost, forgotten. It was like riding a wind, not running on legs. I zoomed in well ahead of anyone else without any bit of pain or fatigue. There was not any feeling of having forced myself to do anything. When the others came in, they were drenched in sweat and puffing. It was not my usual way of making that run. That was running samadhi, a samadhi power. So I remember that experience well. And I'll tell you here about an experience, I may have mentioned this before, when I was in high school. I was on the fencing team, and we traveled around New York City. We were in Queens, Jamaica. We traveled to Brooklyn, Manhattan, various schools to compete with. Once we had traveled, it might have been Boys High School or Stuyvesant in Brooklyn, and I was faced against a much stronger competitor. And I don't know what happened. All I know is that I took my position on guard, I had the foil in my hand. Next thing I knew, I was walking away, and 3 touches, 1, 2, 3, and I had won. And I had no idea, none at all, how it had ever happened, how I had done it. No sense of body and mind, or mind whatsoever. It was a great mystery to me at that point. I didn't know anything about Zen. I didn't know anything about anything, really. But that happened. It does happen. In the beginning, practice seems to be a matter of personal will, but along the way, it clearly becomes the will of the Dharma. There are limits to your own personal will. From the outset, you decide how much you can do, how far you can go, how much strength you have, and you restrict yourself. And in restricting yourself, you start out in your practice already defeated, even while you are practicing something that is unrestricted and limitless. We've all had those experiences of being well beyond what we thought we could do, what we thought we were capable, even if they're fleeting. This is not a Zen thing. It's an insight into reality. We have these things. The real way to start in practice is by dropping off body and mind. That is, all concepts, all our habitual, stuck and clung to places. Let go from the beginning. Of course, your mind will still try to haggle and struggle, and it will still be painful physically. Running and zazen are the same in that way. Cast off body and mind. Forget about them. Throw yourself into the house of Buddha, and everything is done by Buddha. Then zazen simply does zazen. There is no controlling. On the cushion in zazen, we settle into this practice, become one with it, are permeated with it. Off the cushion, we continue to practice while acting in accordance with the time, place, and circumstance, doing what there is to be done. So maintain your practice no matter where you are or what you are doing. It always comes down to just becoming one with it. Now, here. Now, here. Naturally, we continue our practice. This is what is called samadhi. This samadhi, or this life functioning, is always working in everyone. Everyone is endowed with Buddha wisdom, Buddha virtue. Essential mind is essential oneness. In essential mind, there is no separation of subject and object. This is samadhi. To live without separation is to live in samadhi. That doesn't mean separated from anything or in any way special. It's to live, as the Wumen's comments on the first koan, the dog, Buddha nature, we work on that as Mu, is to live in a samadhi of innocent delight, whatever condition we're in, heaven or hell or in between. It's a sense of play that enters. And of course, if you know some of the old philosophical studies on the nature of play, Wiesinger's Homo Ludens was the classic book, if I remember correctly. Play is the highest state of human being. Children are engaged in play all the time. It's how they learn the world with their own bodies and minds. We lose that. We lock ourselves into a dungeon of this restricted sense of possibility. But as I've mentioned before, that doesn't mean if you think everything's possible that you can jump out the window and fly. It's not that kind of possibility. Throwing yourself wholly into one doing, you become this one doing. This truth comes to you in a flash. You can realize it suddenly for yourself. Isn't everything a flowering of samadhi? The floors are horizontal. The pillars are upright. The willow is green. The flower is red. The sun becomes the sun. The earth, the pillar. When the rain falls, it's falling. When the wind blows, it's blowing. North, south, east, west, absolutely free. I remember one of the things that I experienced, and I think many people do, it's the secret of why people motorcycle, is you're so completely present that the wind is just the wind. The trees nothing's pointing to anything else. The sun in the sky is just the sun in the sky. Your hands on the bars in front of you are just your hands on the bar. The handlebars in front of you. There's just this. Everything else falls away, the kind of attention that riding a motorcycle demands. And I remember having an interesting conversation with the next motorcycle racer that I was riding with. One day, we stopped in a small town, and we were having something to eat, and he discovered that I was a writer. And he turned to me, he said, "I want to tell you something." He said, he was an ex-trials racer. He had about 50 motorcycles spread in garages around New York State. So wherever he was, he could ride. In any case, he said to me, it's not about the motorcycle. He used the vernacular. It's not about the bike, he said. It's a spiritual thing. He couldn't say that to others, but I got right away what he was saying. When you're riding, you disappear. You have to be so present or you're dead. So most motorcyclists have that experience, but they don't have a practice. And because they don't have a practice, they can't integrate that into their lives. It's a memory that draws us to ride again and again. All they can do is get on a bike and ride again. But with a practice, you begin to realize some of the very ordinary things that happen in your life and what you're doing, and whatever it is you're doing. This falling away of self-centeredness into this very moment is a very core experience of our being human. In any case, whatever is revealed, that revelation is a revelation of itself, one with itself, clearly. The essence is simple, single. Everything is just one with itself. Be simple. Simply do your practice. There is nothing in excess, nothing lacking. Can you see this for yourself? The splendid brilliance of one truth is penetrating all of heaven and earth. Investigation. So again, Tangen Roshi's autobiography was such a stunning revelation of human character. So once we completed that, we go into his talks, and he was unusual in that he tended not to comment on traditional texts the way most Zen teachers do. He spoke from the depth of his own realization experience in every talk. He just poured it out. So he's now looking at the topic investigation. Human beings are thinking creatures, always thinking. We are free to think, but it creates in us this notion that this being who thinks is a solid and fixed me, separate from everything else. We get lost in discriminating thought, falsely perceiving something that does not exist. This perspective from which most people look is what we call delusion. It is easy to make the mistake of thinking, this is me, my body, I am here, I have a certain amount of knowledge, I have the habit of doing this and that, I have certain skills I can use to get things done. We believe it, we hold on to it, and then we feel incomplete, estranged from something fundamental. To fill this void, we look outside for the things we want, worldly things. We spend our whole life in pursuit of things that will not satisfy us, that will not solve this big problem. All suffering originates with the notion of a separate self. But when you do suffer, that is when you start to seek liberation from suffering. So all is well. It all leads to the truth. In the beginning, we are absorbed in ego self, and we fail to see our true nature. We feel happy and sad. We cry and we get angry. We think that there is a stable, steady, fixed master who is experiencing all of this, but it is not so. It is all a drama. We come out on a stage and play our role, and when the drama is over, we change our clothes, take off our makeup, drop all of that, and return to the form of the actor outside the role. One way of looking at it is that we have been acting all our life, since we were born. So, who is acting? True nature. An ancient teacher had this to say: the moment there appeared that which I thought not to exist, that which I always thought to exist no longer was. The moment there appeared that which I thought not to exist, that which I always thought to exist no longer was. Before Teisho, I thought that I could get something to drink. I would get something to drink. My throat was a little irritated, and I didn't want to subject my students to that harsh voice. The kettle was full, and there beside it was a big cup. I started to pour from the kettle, and I found that the cup was full of milk. Wow, somebody has left me a big cup of milk, I thought. I haven't had a cup of milk for several months. Well, this is great, I thought to myself. I reached for it only to find it wasn't a cup of milk at all. It was a pure white saucer laid over the cup to cover it. When I poured the tea in and it was immediately full, I came under the impression that it was a big cup of milk. To be under the wrong impression. That's how most people live. They are under the wrong impression morning to night, night to morning. And before coming under the wrong impression, before misunderstanding, there is wrong seeing, not recognizing what is, taking one thing to be another. I'm a good example of that, mistaking a saucer for milk. That's why we have to investigate closely what is, to see through this wrong impression. Mindfully, we are taking a breath. What is the self that breathes this breath? Who is breathing this breath? Some of you will be tempted to answer, I am breathing, and leave it at that. I? That I that takes things for granted? The swaggering I that is so easily irritated when things don't go its way? When you go to bed at night as you sleep, where is this I? Do you will yourself to breathe? Inhale now. Okay. Exhale now. Of course not. Who is breathing? I am breathing. Who are you? Who is breathing this breath? This notion of I. What is it? What is behind this notion? If you can find it, please show me. You might say, well, there's this body here. Really? Isn't this in part the rice gruel from this morning? You cannot put that rice gruel aside and come here and say, this is me. If you look into it very closely, you find that you can put nothing aside and say, this is me. Nothing can be put aside. We exist thanks to everything, interdependent with all things. And of course, this is a concept, but what we call kensho, glimpsing self-nature, is a sudden and instantaneous realization of this, not a concept about it. How do you answer when you are faced with a question about this I? Is this I big or little? Is it long or short? Where is this I when no thought arises? If you see clearly through this small notion of I and look from the perspective of true mind without the clouds of delusion, then your ability to think will be just one more shining facet of life. That's why all that is needed is for you to cut through discriminating thought. That is why you must investigate very carefully this notion of me. Your investigation is a form of one-doing. The Zazen posture is the most settled, quiet posture for this investigation, but you can do it anywhere, anytime, in any posture. Boil down your investigation to the most basic question in order to discover whether or not there is a self. What is truth? What is life? What am I? Reach the point where you ask the question. Reach the point where you ask this question, where you are no longer able to look away, no longer able to look out there to some other place for the answer. Each person has some pain, some suffering that fuels their aim to solve this problem, which forces them to seek the answer. It's a fire burning inside, and certainly Tangen as a young man had that fire given his life experiences and the great difficulties he faced. Great talent, let's say, in spiritual practice really comes down simply to great motivation. Great motivation usually arises out of the facing of difficulties in our life. Each person, he says, has some pain, some suffering that fuels their aim fundamentally. Whether you're a Zen Buddhist or not, some motivation is there to solve this problem. What am I? Who am I? Who is breathing this breath? You have to solve this problem for life to feel whole and complete. Who or what or where is your sanctuary, your garden, your guardian, your truth? Truth is limitless, beyond duality, beyond inside and outside. You won't meet with truth or answer your question by searching restlessly, dualistically. You must become this breath. The fathomless universe is this one breath. And you can meet with the one who nurtures you. You can meet with the one who breathes this breath. This is something that I've been saying in the Zendo for the 11 or 12 or 13 years that we've been doing this. Become this breath. Become this koan. Don't sit there thinking about it when you're doing Zazen. Breathe it. Be it. This one doing is to find wholeness, the very source of thought itself. Be a fool, an idiot, a child. This is a very traditional Zen perspective, to approach your practice like a fool, like an idiot. It's not about being smart. It's simply wholehearted. Not knowing anything. Not knowing can be most intimate. Like a fool, like an idiot, or a child, but even more of a child than a child. Investigate this one matter. If you continue this way without rest, your mind will suddenly become bright like a flash of light in the dark. Take a room that was dark for 100 years, or a black cave, dark for thousands of years, and light a candle. There in an instant, the cave is lighter. Wonderful indeed. Roshi Kapleau used to say, our one little glimpse, our paltry little enlightenment, our little kensho, which of course is the beginning of practice. As you go on, years and years on, we deepen and mature this initial insight. Something deeper, more permanent, begins to be the foundation from which we live. He used to say, but this one little experience, it's like lighting a match in a totally dark, huge room. With that one little match, the darkness in that room has changed forever. That also is the effect of a bit of insight, your own, on the world. It's not only that the world affects us, we affect the world. And a bit of insight, a kensho, a glimpse, brings a tiny bit of light into what can be a very dark place. So it's very mutual. The world brings awake in us the desire to realize our nature. And as we practice realization, there is a return of something valuable into our very difficult, complex world. Then you are free, says Tangen Roshi. The notion of a separate me drops away in the letting go of body and mind. It doesn't mean you become a mush. It doesn't mean you fall into a big vat of pudding and everything is one big thing. That's not oneness. Real oneness means each thing is more distinct than ever because you're no longer using your mind to abstraction. You say, oh, that's a tree, that's the sun, that's an ant, that's... No. It's, my God, that's a tree. Do you see that ant? We live in our heads, in a world of abstraction, in a ghost world. But oneness means everything becomes totally itself, the thing in itself. And it's not a philosophical position. It's the taste of this tea. It's the feel of this book in your hands. It's the sound of this air conditioner. each thing distinct, complete, whole, as it's been from the very beginning, but lost in our ghost world. We haven't seen it in our world of abstractions. So, you move about in a samadhi of play, a samadhi of innocent delight. You are blended totally with whatever you encounter. When you reach this point for yourself, there is no more separation, just the genuine one using the discriminating function when needed. In other words, it's not like you can't think anymore. You can think more clearly than ever because you're not identifying with that thought. You're freer to try out thought, to see what works best, for thought to be a tool that works for you, not a prison that you live under or only inside. Anytime, anywhere you stride along, your arms swinging, you are leisurely composed. You are moving in reverence, in worship of everything. The samadhi of play doesn't mean that you play in order to escape something. It doesn't mean that you are trying to satisfy your notions of what you think would make you happy. It is not taking up something that you can disappear into like a hobby, which is useful. I'm not saying don't do that. He's just saying that's not quite what this is. It is pure play, blending as one with whatever you encounter. The genuine one is at play, yet taking full responsibility for the world, doing what needs to be done. Doing what needs to be done. So we'll stop here. It's a little early, but that's okay. We'll next time take up the chapter 16, which is intellectual studies. And then following that, suffering. And then following that, repentance. And then following that, all is well. And then following that, patience. And then following that, the power of a daffodil. And then emptiness, and on until the book is done. And we're back right where we started from. Won't that be fun? So, we'll stop here, recite our great vows for all. I'll stop the recording, turn the computer around so we all face the Buddha, from whom the initial impulse of our practice begins, with his own suffering, his own facing of impermanence and the terror it brought him, and then his determination to wake up to what is beyond this, even as it is this, and his great realization, wonder of wonders, which is the foundation of our own faith and perseverance in practice.